Welcome all you college football fans. This is EWS Sports Podcasting. This is Daniel. I'm Jake. We have a lot to talk about today and a recap of
Week 9.
Great Week 9. Let's get right into it.
So we're going to start off, as we always do, with our top performers from last week.
All right, well, number 3, I have the running back from Oklahoma State, Desmond Rowland. He put up a great 219 yards and 4 rushing touchdowns versus a great Iowa State team.
I wouldn't say a great Iowa State team.
Well, they're not great.
A solid defense.
It was a solid win for them. It was a great conference win in the Big 12. You know what? They'll take it.
Desmond Rowland was sharp. My number 3 is Shadrach Thornton. I hope I pronounced his name right. Running back for NC State. The only bright spot for NC State in that game was 173 yards and 2 touchdowns against Florida State.
They just got blown out. I mean, Winston looked great in that game, as he always does.
And your number 2?
My number 2 is the quarterback from University of Houston, John O'Korn. He put up a solid 364 passing yards and 5 passing touchdowns, and he probably could have done more because they took him out early because they were blowing out Rutgers.
Yeah, I really didn't see that game coming. I know Houston made a huge statement, bouncing back after losing to BYU. O'Korn looked great.
Yeah, and next they'll be playing on Halloween night, Thursday night, versus South Florida.
Yeah, so that's one to watch.
All right, your number 2.
My number 2 is Tyler Gaffney, running back for Stanford against Oregon State, 145 yards, 3 touchdowns. He powered Stanford past Oregon State.
You know, Kevin Hogan hasn't looked his best, but watch out for him on Sundays. I think he'll make a statement in the NFL.
I don't see it. But your number 1?
All right, my number 1 is the Ohio State backfield, consisting of Braxton Miller, their quarterback, and Carlos Hyde, their running back. Miller put up a solid 252 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and solid 68 rushing yards and 2 rushing TDs.
Great backfield.
And don't forget about Carlos Hyde. He's just looked great over these past couple weeks. He put up 147 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns versus Penn State. You know, they have 20 wins in a row, and I look for them to keep going.
Yeah, I could see them winning out. Their schedule, they've already passed the tough part. Their only tough game is Michigan. I don't think that's a tough game.
Yeah, you never know, though.
Yeah.
Michigan's a solid team.
Yeah. My last one is Jordan Lynch. He only got 203 passing yards. Why is he in your top 3, you may ask? 4 touchdowns passing, a touchdown receiving, a touchdown rushing, completed the trifecta, 99 yards rushing.
Triple doozy.
The triple doozy. What a week for Jordan Lynch and the undefeated Northern Illinois. I don't know their team name, but.
And just to note, the Division III from Western Connecticut running back Octavius McCoy put up a whopping 455 rushing yards and 5 rushing TDs. I mean, that's just video game numbers right there.
Yeah, that's worth talking about, although it is Division III, you have to remember that.
Yeah, but still, 455 rushing yards. That's some sort of record, I'll bet you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go on to a new segment of our podcast, the winners and losers from last week. The first winner we have is Ohio State's offense. We talked about them in our impact performers. Over 680 yards of total offense, 63 points against Penn State, and 0 turnovers. Nothing lacking there.
You know,
Great game.
if their defense improves, they should be making a statement that they could be right there with Florida State and Oregon in the top 3.
Yeah, they're trying to make a statement, trying to get up in the top 3. I think they'll need some help.
It's just very hard with their schedule.
Our next loser is the Vanderbilt quarterback depth.
Ooh.
Their starting quarterback, Austin Carter-Samuels, he's solid, but he was unable to play this week against A&M because of an indefinite leg injury. He's out. Their backup quarterback, Pat Robinette, I mean, he was just awful. 15 of 28, 216 yards. You may say that's okay. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. And then they go get their third-string quarterback against A&M, Josh Grady, 18 yards throwing, 1 interception, left the game with a bad injury. So that's not a good sign for Vanderbilt fans out there. That's a real problem for them.
Well, to their credit, it's hard going to Kyle Field and College Station and playing well. Not many teams can do that. But,
Yeah.
I mean, Vanderbilt's still a solid team. I mean, once they get Carter Samuels back for sure, I think they'll be at full strength.
I agree. Our next winner is Duke as a whole team, beating number 14 Virginia Tech, although only having 198 yards of offense, 4 turnovers, and allowing 387 yards of offense. It's a mystery how they won that game. Pretty boring game, 13 to 10?
Yeah, it was. And keep note that Duke had less than 200 yards of total offense.
And they still managed to pull off the upset.
Yeah.
And our last loser is the NC State defense in the first quarter against famous Jameis Winston, allowing 35 points in the first quarter.
And I mean, Jameis Winston's looked great all year. He's a definite Heisman contender.
Definitely.
I mean, to NC State, I mean, just let that go. Play next week like you didn't even play last week, and just move on.
Yep, you gotta look ahead.
That was just a depressing loss.
Can't look back. So, what do you have for us?
All right, well now, there weren't many, but I have some upsets from last week. First, Minnesota was able to pull off an upset versus number 24 Nebraska by a score of 34-23. Taylor Martinez is just coming back, and he did not look full strength. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota, they're decent, but that's just a bad loss for Nebraska. Martinez is shaken up a bit. I'm sure that's a factor, but they just got to look forward. Can't look back.
All right, next, as you said earlier, the Dukies were able to go to Virginia Tech and pull it out with a score of 13-10. I mean, not a lot of offense in that game,
Pretty boring game.
The defense just looked very solid from both teams, actually.
Yep, Duke looked good. They're real. They're not a pushover in the ACC. Teams better note that.
Yeah. Next, not much of an upset, but number 15 Oklahoma was able to go into Lubbock and defeat Texas Tech by a score of 38-30.
I think that's big. I really didn't see that coming. I don't think you saw that coming either. Blake Bell looked great. And ever since Oklahoma lost to Texas, we've been doubting them. But, I mean, I'd put them back up in the rankings high.
And Texas Tech's normal starting quarterback, Baker Mayfield, is out. Might be out for the rest of the year. And they just haven't looked the same, although they were unbeaten until last week.
They have a solid backup quarterback, but, yeah, they won't be the same.
Yeah, and next, the final upset of the week, another unbeaten team, number 5 Missouri, could not pull it out versus number 21 at the time, South Carolina. They lost in 2 overtimes on a game-winning field goal, or actually a game-missed field goal by their kicker, 27-24.
Crazy game. I got South Carolina in that game last week.
I mean, and now we are going to the big games that weren't upsets from last week. First, in a thriller going down to the last play, Oregon State could not pull it out versus Stanford at home.
That was a great game. Oregon State, Sean Mannion didn't look that bad, but Stanford really contained them for the first time under 300 yards.
Yeah, all the Heisman voting is going to be really confusing for this week because Mannion was up there, but he didn't have his best game. All right, and the last game we're going to cover from last week is the big one. Oregon was able to pull off a win versus UCLA by a score of 42-14. What were your thoughts on that one?
Great game for Oregon. They really made a statement. They got themselves to number 2 in the BCS polls. Their backfield looked great, even though the Black Mamba didn't play much in the second half. Brett Hundley, back-to-back bad losses. What do you think?
Well, I think you pretty much covered it all.
So that's it for this week. We'll see you next week.